what's up? I'm HW.
And I'm Michael Britt.
Michael, we have a cut knob on the Kemper.
Where did that come from?
Did you ever think the day would come? So I think I've been getting a million questions. When's Liquid Profile coming out?
Yep.
I don't know the answer to that question. Do you know the answer?
Very soon, I know that.
Very soon. And soon...
Could be before we put this out.
Exactly. But we have both been able to test liquid profiling.
Yep.
Got a ton of questions about it. You've been using it. I've been using it. And here's a liquid profile.
This is Liquid Profile.
You want to play for a second?
Sure.
And I'll mess with these?
Yeah. Sounds like you just turned the cut knob up on the box.
I did. We're cutting more.
Cool.
I'll tell you my first impressions of using this. It does that. You know what I mean? It makes you feel like you're back on the amp. For better or for worse, right?
It builds in the bugs of the amp, which that was kind of one of the selling points of Kemper, is kind of, it elevated the amp. It didn't have to be stuck with all the bugs. But now, if you want it, you can get it. If you don't want it, you don't have to turn it on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the best of both worlds.
I think it is a really cool option to have. You've made some stuff. Let's try it out. I like it. So when we dive in here, we get all our old controls.
Right.
Plus old controls, plus new controls.
New EQ instead of the 4-band.
New EQ, and then we have our generic. We've got our model here, and all the you know, all the stuff.
So the money part is this part right here, the old amp model. So this is a Bandmaster, so they don't have a Bandmaster model, so I had to pick something that was closest to it. So I picked a Vibrolux, excuse me.
Vibrolux.
Because Vibrolux was it's the closest thing to a Bandmaster.
Yeah.
Because it has 6L6 power tubes instead of 6Vs.
So there's all these like models built in, right? And we've heard 40 get thrown around.
I think so.
That there's going to be 40 of these available. I think I can say that from some of my conversations, I get the vibe they're kind of planning on making more as time goes on. That this is something that kind of gets updated.
That's one thing Kemper is really good at, is continually updating.
Yeah,
and
for
giving
sure.
you more stuff without having to go buy new.
So there's a bunch of stuff in here. I'll even put on the screen right now. Here's all of the ones that are in our beta.
Yeah.
And I can confirm, not confirm, that they're thinking at least about making some more, right? I think that's their plan. They're going to be updating. So there's going to be more available. So if you're like super attached to like, I gotta have it for this one amp, that's gonna be there. I don't know when, but they're pretty good about like responding, you know. So how do you approach like all this? We now have like multiple gains. We've got a generic gain, we've got a gain pot reference.
So when I first heard about this, I thought, I'm not going to use this. This is so, I mean, I love the Kemper the way it was. I love the I call it dislocated EQ. You know, it was its own thing. It didn't sound like an amp knob, but there were lots of people writing in saying, I want it to feel more like an amp when you turn the EQ knob. So now you have the best of both worlds. You can use it or not use it. And I got so used to just being able to look at these little lights here and know how much gain I'm about to listen.
Yeah, me too. You know where 3 is and 2 and 4, 5.
And even when I'm editing, I could edit without even plugging in headphones. I could literally just knowing
1, 2, 3
everything I know.
That's where I want it. Yeah.
So these suddenly become a little bit more arbitrary because they're not going to be the same per amp. Right. So a gain at 5.5 on a Fender clean amp is still going to be clean, whereas a gain at that same thing on a Marshall is going to be dirty. Yeah. So they're kind of going to be a little bit more arbitrary. But once you get around that, it's actually kind of cool. Yeah. You just can't just look at it and see what it's going to sound like anymore.
I think for me, like using a profile, even like creating some liquid profiles, I was at some points like wanting the old Kemper like stack back, which I can still get. I can still turn it back to generic. Right. But it is cool having like a cut knob on a Vox. Absolutely. Like you can instantly just get more or less of the upper stuff. Right. And that's not you can't do that with the presence knob. You can't do that with the treble. It's a little different. It's not like a sweeping, thing. So If you kind of know how to set up how you like an AC30, you can get there really quick.
Right.
But you take like what happened to me. I took like a 73 super bass Marshall, and I just put them all on one knob, and I profiled it. And then as I was dialing in the sound, I thought, man, I wish I could put a shelf at 8K. And it's not on the Marshall, right? But that's on a Kemper,
right?
But so there's more options.
It does give you more options to be able to make it how you want it to be.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound different.
There's minor sound changes when I'm using the models.
Yeah.
But to me, they've all been positive.
What's your kind of favorite application of this? Are you more into it on the Marshalls, on the Vox stuff? I'm sort of all in on the Vox stuff. I find Marshall EQs to be rather useless.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I would probably use the generic EQ on Marshalls.
Yeah, I agree. Or at least a studio EQ for me.
Right.
Something, because I find Marshalls sound the best when everything's on 10, and then you kind of got to clean up your mess.
I feel like there's a lot of overlap in the Marshalls. Like when you start turning up mids, you get high end, and I don't know. I just kind of like keeping. I have more control over with the generic EQ. I can add mids without it screwing up everything else around it.
Well, here we got a Marshall. Okay. What's a good one here?
That one is. Oh, that's a Nobles here, LP1. So this is just the amp. So I did put it on the Plexi model. So this one is with the model.
Bright channel.
Sounds good to me.
So if I were to demonstrate what you were talking about, some of
I don't feel like I hear this changing as much. On the real amp, it would be that way.
Right.
It'd be very minor changes.
They're mostly useless EQs. Like, I mean, they're pretty, like...
They don't do a lot.
No, you can't transform the sound of your amp much at all. And, I mean, look, go ahead. That is exactly what a Marshall does.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just the tiniest little bit of, like, there or not, but you're really not affecting the whole thing. It's you know.
The cool thing is if you want that, you got it. And if you don't, you just go turn it to generic, and then you got your really powerful cut boost EQ.
Yeah, totally. Here, let's...
Sounds like Marshall Dime.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, you just turn everything up, and it kind of, that like instantly to me becomes the thing. Then it's about, I'll tell you where this, I go back and forth on like, is this like, it's definitely game changing in terms of authenticity.
Right.
I do run into this thing of like, well, how you set up the amp also is determined by how you are miking it and the speaker and things like that. So you're still, as a Kemper player, you still, like, you can control the amp, but in terms of like moving the mic and stuff, we still would need to use our old tools, like in the cabinet section.
Right.
And there's still definition.
Right. And
so it feels like you still want to utilize some of the older stuff. You almost have to.
Well, you do. I mean, the definition is still one of the most beautiful parameters in here.
Yeah.
And the high and low cuts in the speaker cab section. Yeah. I love those because you can tailor stuff really quickly with it. To me, one of the coolest features, you're a huge blackface Fender guy.
I love them. I have them all.
If you're using the generic EQ that we've been using forever, you know there's like a sweet spot between, like on the gain knob, 2.2 and 2.8.
Yes.
There's like, it's a pretty small range between totally clean to start breaking up.
And they live there on a real Fender. It's like between 2 to 6 is
exactly
right.
Like, depending on which model.
Yeah.
So it was always like is 2.4 too much gain? 2.3 is not enough. There's always like a really thing.
Yeah.
So with the model now, since everything's been shifted, because basically you just shifted everything, because you're never going to get above a 5 on the gain on a real Fender.
Sure.
So now with that, I've got a way bigger sweep to get that sweet spot in.
Right.
So I feel like it's a little bit more easy to dial in that kind of edge of breakup tone right where you want it.
Yeah, because you're not dealing with the full sweep of like all the gain possible.
Right. From
of all
blackface
amps.
to Soldano.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's just blackface to blackface, which only goes up to...
Yeah. So look here, you've got a 67 Deluxe.
Yeah.
And let's. We just got the controls. They're like at 6, you know, 6s. But we can up this.
Correct. Pretty good sounding.
It is
gained up Deluxe,
and this sounds like a Deluxe on that 6-ish setting. A Deluxe on 6 to me would profile like 3.5 maybe, like 4. I don't know, somewhere.
Well, that's when we can look at it too and see where the generic gain's at 4.4.
4.4. Yeah.
So that's
I was way off.
Well, it's still a really cool feature to be able to see what your old game would look like.
Right.
In comparison to this. So even if you turn it up all the way, it's only getting to 5.5.
Yeah.
Or 5.2.
5.2. What it would be.
Right.
If you, like, this is how much gain if you weren't
using this. This is all
this.
the gain that's even possible out of this amp.
Right. 5.2.
Yeah. But you have all this room to get that sweet spot now.
You know what's funny? I always get people telling me, why don't you turn the amps all the way up? Why do you only do clean profile? And I'm always like, I did. I
just didn't like it.
That's as dirty. No, I do. Like, I put the Deluxe on 10, and this is what it does. It doesn't go more than that.
Yeah.
Old, you know, especially 50-watt plexis don't have that upper end zing of like a later aluminum panel. Mm-hmm. They just don't. They don't go all the way. You know.
I think people will be shocked at how little gain is in a real plexi.
Oh, it's not a lot. It's really not a lot, and it's really not a lot. I think people forget that's why everyone modded stuff in the 80s and the late 70s, and then also why the Tube Screamer, you know, that sounds like all you had to get it there. Okay.
So this is a 68 plexi. It's on gain like 6 or 7.
I was just going to guess that. Yeah.
So it's not.
Yeah.
There's not much more room.
Yeah.
And it's barely breaking up.
Yeah, you're on a humbucker. Put it on a single.
Yeah.
And that's already a stack single. So like there's.
Great tone. It's just not gaining. It's not what most people think a plexi sounds like.
Could go juicy, cleanish type. Look, I'm looking for the gain knob here, but what I really meant to do was the gain knob.
Starting to get a low end buildup. Still not a ton of gain compared to any.
Yeah, and I was going to say not even really cutting a ton of bass because that's that's how it goes.
The Marshall EQs don't do it.
Right. They don't really work that well. Right?
If you want extremes, you're going to have to use a generic EQ or your EQ block.
That's sort of the funny thing of this whole thing. It's like we're more authentic but less effective.
And that's maybe the trade-off.
Yeah, right.
More authentic, less control over it.
There's some magic though, you know, like this mids knob and a Marshall almost never sounds bad at any. Like, you know.
Well, it's so subtle.
Yeah, right.
I don't hear any change.
No. That's just the cabs in the room. We're like right on close to it, but I can hear a little change when I come over here a little bit. These are so. I think people want to know. I want to know too.
Okay.
So that I can copy you. How are you gonna build packs going forward? How do you view this in terms of like? Do you want to offer an authentic version, you know, with the liquid profile, or do you stick with the generic stuff? I personally feel like it kind of depends on the amp. With the Fender stuff, with the Vox stuff, maybe even some of just the more traditional stuff. Maybe it's cleaner. I do tend to go, I like this a lot.
Well, I feel like I'll be making less profiles in the sense that when it was the old way we do it without liquid profiling, I would literally profile at all these different gain levels with slightly different EQs changes. Because as you turn the gain up, you have to start dumping low end because it'll just screw up the whole gain stage. So I'll be making less, but I'll probably make some of both because there's something about a profile done at the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to experiment now. So the manual says to make the profiles with the gain knobs, or all the knobs at noon, or the gain all the way up, either or, but all the EQ knobs at noon. But I've also been experimenting with setting it to my sweet spot and just calling that noon. Because if you think about it, that's kind of a cool way to do it, because I don't have to go chase what I want my sound to be. Like, if I put all the amp knobs at noon, that may not be what I want it to sound like.
Sure.
It'll be more authentic, like you said. It's more authentic, but is it the sound I want to hear?
Right.
So I'll probably do one like that, and then I'll do one with where I think it sounds great, and call that noon.
Right.
And then I'll still be able to adjust it from there.
Yeah,
it won't be as authentic,
right,
but it'll be more usable.
Right. And you're giving yourself your sound with the maximum ability to go up or down.
Exactly.
And if you like the frequencies, that the amp is sort of choosing.
And I'll probably do some generic ones too.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
yeah, right.
So it'll probably be a little bit fewer. I don't have to do as many to capture every gain setting. But there's some amps are going to sound better on the models, and some may sound better generic.
I'm almost tempted to go like, I'm going to make profiles mostly generic, and then I'll make directs with this.
Yeah.
And put an IR on there. And just go, hey, if you're really after the most authentic, you probably want to also have the ability to change a bunch of IRs and this. Doesn't sound the most fun to me, but...
Do you do merged, or do you just use our third-party IRs?
I make the, I'm the third party.
Yeah. You make your own IRs.
Hello. That's something I've been doing just more recently with some more recent packs. And
but you don't do the merge with the studio cab?
No, I don't bother doing that.
Okay.
Is there a point? If I make a direct and give you the IR, is there a point to merging them?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
There was about a 6-month period I used all merged profiles live, and then I wanted an amp that I had made a merged profile, so I put that amp into the show, and I was like, well, that sounds more put together, so I got rid of all the merged ones. So
I think the merge
some people love the merge, especially if they're using guitar cabs and they want to separate it completely.
I think the merge is the most useful if you don't want to shoot a separate IR. You have mic'd up a cabinet and adjusted it for that amp.
Right.
Now you would have to do a lot. You can just make the studio version and then boom, do the direct. And now you have the merge and you have the perfect separation between.
So do you make the IR at the same time you're making the profiles?
No, I'm usually making IRs. We are way off topic here. I'm usually making IRs.
I'm just curious.
No, that's why. I am usually making IRs separately, usually with a reference amp that I think is a nice reference. And then later, if I want to capture something direct, I capture direct, bring in those IRs.
I see.
And then sometimes what I do is I will create a variation of the IR based on another amp. Like if I have a speaker and I think it works well with one amp, and I've made this IR, and then later I apply it to another direct profile, it might inspire me to go, this IR would be great with a shelf at 8K, or a little more of a boost here, and then I can call that something a little bit different.
Right.
But it's an EQ variation, but it's birthed out of like, when I put it with the Vox, I liked this.
Aren't we always going for that extra 2%? I mean, like, this gets us 98% of the way there, and then the rest of the time we're just trying to get that last little bit.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those 2% things, right? It's that, does the cut knob work well? Okay, let's break it. Let's break it, because this is the first, literally, when I heard about this, the first thing I thought was, what would it,
Vox in there, so
what would it sound like? That's okay, even better, you have a Marshall.
Okay,
so I'm gonna mess with this. Now, your EQ here is mostly in the middle.
Yeah.
But when I switch the model, we're gonna see what happens.
Okay.
You can get some like fun changes.
It's not technically changing the profile so much, but it's going to change the way you're able to control it edit wise.
Okay, I'm realizing okay, check this out. So I gotta, let me make some more.
It does default to the same.
Yeah, let me make some more changes so that way we can hear a little bit. that sound more Voxy?
Sounds like a Marshall, but it's
Yeah,
there's something different about
There's
it.
something Voxy about it. You know, like all of a sudden we're using the EQ from a Vox, so boosting that EQ might bring a little more of that Vox things forward. Almost like part of the amp sound could come from the EQ.
Right. You're basically sticking a Vox tone stack in a Marshall.
Right. We know from Jim Lill's video that's not true, though. The EQ never affects it. Okay, go ahead.
He ruins everything. It should be like Jim ruins everything. Guitar tone woods don't matter.
It's really, I get depressed because I go, everything I believe is a lie. Everything I believe is a lie in this world.
That's funny.
So this is now AC30. What we're doing, because I have the EQs up, and we're cycling through these models.
So you're hearing the changes more drastically.
Yeah, and you're hearing the accents are different. We're like boosting at a place, you know?
Yeah.
And technically, I think for some of these, we're not boosting at all. We're just not passing, high or low passing, right?
Right.
So you're hearing like just basically different EQs come in. It's almost like there's an EQ that we're just applying over.
It's like a layer sitting on top of the generic or the profile. You can make your Marshall sound snarky. Like
You can make it sound like that.
Knob all the way down.
Now we have no mid knob.
Yeah. I put it on the generic. So go back to the way the world was before this week.
It translated it as the presence being down.
Okay.
You know, which is
So the cut and the presence are tied together.
I get. Oh well, actually, I had the cut, less cut, more high end. But when I went back, that meant the presence was cut, which is the opposite.
Right.
Because the cut works in reverse.
Right.
Does that
reverse presence?
So the brighter cut was making the presence darker. Anyway. Much more. I mean, look, you can dump the bass.
Truly hear a difference. It's not like the
huge.
Marshall.
So enormous.
That's
Mids,
what I loved about this EQ for 10 years.
Yeah, it works.
It works
great. Really well. The mids, like.
Is it authentic?
No, of course not.
But it's very usable.
Try the mids right here.
A lot more change than the Marshall.
Ton. I mean, that's.
I love whatever frequency they got this dialed in as, but I know if I can go a couple lights up, it's a perfect kind of a lead cut.
Yeah.
Mid.
For me, it's like it fits the Marshall really well because it hits mid-range that a Marshall doesn't. The Marshall.
Marshall mid-range is higher.
Yeah, the high mid thing.
And it fills in perfectly where blackface amps kind of need.
Yeah.
Because they've got a little bit of a mid scoop and it kind of fills it in.
Try this treble. You know, it's funny when you turn up the presence like that. My brain instantly went, "Oh, that sounds just like the cut knob," but my brain would tell me this is wrong. How could you ever turn the presence all the way up there? But if I just cut the cut knob down to 9 o'clock,
right,
I'm probably doing the same thing.
Right,
but that's okay. My brain thinks that's okay because it cut.
So we don't like to see extremes.
Yeah. You want it. Oh, it must be in the middle, accurate. Right. This is how it should be. That's how they intended.
Yeah.
People sometimes ask me, what would if I move the knob, do I destroy the accuracy? I don't know. I don't think so. Who cares?
Well, you have to weigh. Do I want it to be accurate or do I want it to be usable?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a little of both.
Yeah.
And I think it's just cool that we have an option now. It's a new option that we didn't have before. Yeah,
it's super cool. I know people are really excited to get their hands on this. I have no idea when it comes out.
I don't either.
And so, sorry.
I know it's soon.
Soonish.
Soonish. Unless they're still debugging.
This is this was Eric Johnson's.
That is.
Yeah, this Marshall.
That's a great little Marshall.
Yeah. You still got it?
I do. I don't think it's going anywhere.
No. Why would it?
Why would it?
Why would it? 3.8. I would I'm trying to think percentage wise. What am I going to use? I'm going to use this 40% of the time.
I thought when I first heard about it, I was like, I don't need it. I love the generic EQ because it is, like you showed, just super powerful. But I started doing profiles on it. I'm like, these kind of sound nice. And there's something different. So I've yet to decide. I haven't used them live yet.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I do that, I'll know if it's going to be something I'll be.
Yeah.
I may use up to 80% of these. So
yeah. And
I'm
I
not
think,
sure yet.
And I wonder because there's so many variations like bad cat matchless that you could apply to a Vox, you know.
Right.
And it's like I guess you just use it there and then you see how you like it. You know, are those tone stacks the same? I don't know. Is the value on a factory top boost Marshall the same values as went out in the top boost kits as, you know, somebody else used later? Do they move around? They of course move around. All amps are different.
And caps change over time too.
Yeah.
So you could have two of the same vintage, same year amp, and the components might have drifted enough to make them sound different.
For sure. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes I think in amps especially, they just use whatever was on the shelf that day.
Right.
And if they ran out of something, they figured out a way to make it work.
I mean, I know people that have literally bought a Kemper, found one sound, and that's all they've used on it.
Right.
And there's people like you and I that spend a lot of time on this, and they constantly trying things.
A lot of sounds.
Trying to get that 2%.
Yeah.
So, and there's some guys that just want to plug in and make them feel like it's a regular amp. So it's kind of, the Kemper just kind of becomes whatever you need it to be in a way.
I like that. Well said. Well said. Did they
I
pay
mean, if
you
you
to
want
say
it,
that?
no, I'm just saying that. I feel like that's the drawback with other devices that I've tried, which you can get really good sounds out of any of them.
Yes.
But this becomes what you want it to be.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm laughing because so many people, like, you know, I think, you know, accuse me of like getting a check or something for Kemper.
No.
No. Well, this will be available soon, and I dig it. I'll do, you know, I'll do some more, you know, some content on actually, you know, here's the this and that, because there's a couple cool things in here, like with the bright cap, which in some of these models, you know, if there's a bright cap, you have the bright cap intensity.
Right.
So like, for example, you got a Deluxe Reverb, and you can, here, play this a little bit. We'll see how this is.
Instead of just a bright switch off and on, you can turn the bright down as a range.
Yeah, and it'll work even less because bright caps are less effective the higher up you go. So
right.
You'll hear. So that's a ton of optionality that exists right there, just cleaning something up,
right,
and using that. That's a really good use case, actually, for this, what is now a clean Marshall with a Fender style bright cap.
Yeah,
like absolutely something that doesn't exist. I mean, in a way, you've created a new thing here, and
you may find just combinations of stuff that work for you.
I mean, completely. Imagine. Yeah, your favorite Marshall with the
Vox tone stack.
Yeah, or editing the bright cap.
Oh yeah.
You know, on like a bright thing like that. I mean, that instantly what you're playing is more. It still sounds like a Marshall, but it sounds like
there's a layer of Fender on it somehow.
It sounds like a Nashville Marshall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nashville Marshall.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I don't know how it's actually going to work, because I do a lot of profiling with pedals in the chain. So this isn't really set up for that, because when you're setting your relative gain, you're setting what the gain is on the amp.
Right.
So that it knows how to track properly.
Right.
But when you stick a pedal in front, it's all bets are off, because now you've introduced gain that isn't on the amp.
Right.
So we're still trying to figure out how to do that, because you still have to assign it a gain level. Do you want it to be where it looks the same as your clean sound, or do you want it to...
Do you want the EQ, the liquid EQ, the accurate tone stack if you're using a pedal in front?
It's possible. I don't know. This is just trial and error at this point.
It is.
Find what works for you. I mean, for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to find what works for me. So.
Right. Let's what else do you got here?
So any with the N, that's with like a Noble's overdrive in front.
So here's the same Marshall with the note. We're sort of working with a Marshall tone stack that doesn't do much anyway. So
Yeah.
you know, the Nobles is adding so much already. We're not going to be able to undo the Nobles. But if I were to say, I mean, it's accurate, but that does not sound like an amp that I've just dumped all the mid range.
No, not at all.
it's still the same.
And crank the treble.
The same thing. So I don't know.
So some tone stacks are just going to be more powerful than others.
Yeah. The old Marshall ones don't work. Here's that Vox again.
Immediately gets that snarky top end. How to ruin your sound.
So that's interesting because the Vox tone stack has a lot of mid range on here because there's no mids.
Right.
So if you want to put the mid range, you get this growly. There's not like a ton of, I guess maybe because there's not a ton of low anyway. I don't know what it's dialed in for, but instantly we got this like growly. It's not. It doesn't feel like just bass. It sounds like something.
Sounds like something.
You know. Here, let's.
Sounds like a Marshall run through a Vox cabinet.
Yeah, right. It sounds like a JCM 4. You know, it's like that.
4-watt JCM.
The 4-watt JCM, and of course you can. That's interesting. It's a high cut, like a treble cut. Lot of presence, or treble reduction.
You can do a lot with it.
You could do something with that. That's a sound. I don't know how else you would get it.
Right.
It's a something.
It's a sound.
It's a
This thing
something.
makes sounds.
It makes sounds
all day long.
So I guess leave your comments below. I will make some more content based on people want to see. You know, I can. There's endless ABs that could be done, you know, and endless like, how does the bright cap work with this, and how does the bright cap work with this, and can you show the treble versus the bright cap? And it's kind of thing you got to get your hands on and feel it, and
it's going to be different with every model.
Every model, and every profile. Mm-hmm. And have you tried taking any old profiles and just randomly assigning something without knowing the settings?
I did a couple, yeah. But I was really kind of focusing this week on just creating some with the new firmware.
Yeah.
But they do have the retrofit. So if you have kind of your settings before, I've retrofitted a kind of handful of them.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, you just take your one and put it in, and you have all the settings of all your profiles.
My earliest ones I didn't, because I didn't know how important I was just trying to make sounds. I didn't know I was going to be doing this 10 years later. So my earliest ones, I realized that I do not have everything. Yeah. And then I've gone through, I have steno books just filled with notations.
Yeah.
And I've actually scanned most of those now.
Yeah, that's cool.
So now they're all, I can look them up quickly now on the computer. Before it was just like, which book is it in? I don't know. Yeah. So I have some of them, but there's still some holes that I just didn't write it down that day. A lot of times if I'm profiling amps that are mine, that I know I'm not putting in a pack, I'm just doing my own, I don't write them down. Mm-hmm. But those end up being the ones I use the most. So
right.
Because I'm just trying to, if I've profiled my 72 Marshall 50,000 times, there's going to be one magic one that I end up using. And I can't just keep putting out profiles of the same amp.
Right.
So, but yeah, I keep making them for me, thinking I can get that 2% better.
There's something else there.
Yeah.
I set up a lot of Fenders similarly, you know, all sixes. I do that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Stevie Ray Vaughan did that.
Yeah.
All sixes.
That's sort of the evil Fender sound. Voxes. I mean, everybody.
Some amps. So that's one issue I ran into is when I'm profiling the way the manual tells you to do it. If you have all the knobs at 5.5 or 6, sometimes that's just a lot of low end going into the gain section.
Yes.
And it can make some bad sounding profiles. And then you're supposed to be able to turn the knobs and then clean them up. But I haven't found that is. I find it better if I just make the amp sound good.
But you kind of got to start from a good spot. So and you take like all 5s or all 6s on a normal channel of a Marshall versus a bright channel of a Marshall. It's way different.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I run that presence on the bright. It's down, but on the normal, it's all the way up.
Right.
I mean, that's like a starting point.
And the bass is almost off.
Off. And I wish I could get like more room. I wish there was an 11 and 12 to get more. And there's
the Marshall EQ is not very effective.
But there is now. Right?
Right.
I mean, now you could do it there and then go, what if the presence went higher? What if the bass went lower?
Yeah.
And then eventually you just go back to the Kemper generic EQ because it works really well for cutting bass. There's just endless choice in how to edit a sound.
Right.
Pre-gain amp, after the amp, in the middle, at a gain stage in front, and then how the amp's built. You could throw stuff in the X block. You can shelf, cut. You can just do everything, and you can do it, and it's endless. And so, it feels like you could get to a good tone in a million ways.
You can.
Do you think this makes it easier? If you're somebody who just plays in their bedroom, do you think this makes it easier to get the right tone?
You still have to start with a good profile.
Yeah.
But yeah, once you do that, I think for some guys that are coming from the real amp world, I think it might be easier. And from the people coming from the long-time Kemper users, there's still going to be features that you'll find that you really like in it. Like when I go to my Bandmaster, I kind of like just having the bass and treble knobs. Because there's no presence on a Bandmaster, so I can just, I feel like it is a little more true to the amp. And if you're starting with a good spot, then that's all the better.
Yeah.
And your sweet spots become bigger. Whereas on the generic, you're trying to find that little sweet spot, where it's clean but not breaking up, or your EQ. I don't know. It's definitely usable. And that's the cool thing. I know I brag about the Kemper all the time. I've got all the other boxes, and I use this because it works.
Yeah, it works. I know how to get around on it.
Yeah.
I wonder if you are a person far less familiar with a lot of these amps in real life, if you will sort of just see a bass and and you'll just go like, why is that different than this one? And I wonder if we'll get people asking online, hey, I tried this liquid EQ thing and now none of my EQ works. I'm playing a Marshall.
Let's just go to your amp model and turn it to generic, and then your EQ will start working.
So I'm really excited about this.
I think it's cool. I thought it was not going to be something I would use, and now I feel like I'm going to be using it.
There's definitely a lot of application for it, and I'm excited to see how the community will use it. Well, I think that's enough gabbing, and hopefully Christoph will get this out soon to everybody. I've been HW.
And I'm Michael Britt.
Michael, are you going to come on the Guitar Friends podcast?
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it.